Record. Okay. So last time we kind of looked over some of the 2D commands, and actually we learned patch, which was pretty interesting. Actually, no, we did a review on patch. And then, okay, yeah, thank you. This is English, right? Okay. Move this over here. Okay. And we learned a very important command last week, which was network surface, which is kind of a transition step from creating your normal 2D surfaces into creating a complex 3D shape, which you can create just from 2D curves. And I'll do a brief kind of demonstration of that. So for example, let's just open another workspace. And here, okay. So let's say this is kind of our working area. Okay, surface out of it. So actually, essentially, we can start from loft. And if you have two circles, kind of like this. Oops, I have to make another one. This goes up. And let's say we make this one bigger. So that is how we essentially how loft, the most basic function of loft works. You essentially select two curves, press enter, and you get this kind of like a squeeze, like a short cup or like a bowl, kind of like this shape. And the network surface kind of expands on the idea by allowing you to modify a lot more than what you can do in loft. Because in loft, everything that connects your two cross sections, which is these two circles, your railings, which is the lines that are drawn between the two cross sections, are actually always straight. On the other hand, for network surface, we can actually do a lot more interesting things. So let's use the two same cross sections. Okay. Here. So again, we have these two circles. What if we want, for example, make it so that the edge isn't straight? We can draw another intercurve. So if we look at it from this side, from our first side, I think it's no, right, from the right side, we go. Or actually, I think front right. Sorry, it's a little upside down because I was working. It's not working this file. Essentially, let's arrange this better. So let's put it over here, and then look at it from this side. Okay, now we have our two curves. This is the surface actually. This one is just circle. So let's just move a little bit. So we have our two circles, which is a line, which are lines in your 2D view. We can draw intercurves. So start from, let's say here, and what your loft does, and you can see kind of here, it essentially makes straight lines, right? That connects your cross sections. But network surface, excuse me, allows us to be more creative. So what if I want to make a surface like that? Actually, like this. It's not planar. So, oh yeah, make sure when you're drawing these railings that you have the mode planar on. This is why you see how my line was kind of going ham like that. That's because it's clipping onto unnecessary objects that are like all the way over here, if you know what I mean. This is why when you have planar on, highlight it next to snap and wrist snap. Essentially, you're able to draw these lines that are straight. Let me just go back. Turn this on. Okay. Okay. So loft this is what loft does basically. You draw, let's say, like two straight lines, and it connects the shape into a cup. So that's loft. But with network surface, we can actually modify. So let's say we do that. So we can kind of have like this, I don't even know what this is, kind of like half of a leaf. And then when you move into perspective mode, you can see that we have this unique curve here. And this allows us to actually create any outline that we want. So for example, we can make a different one here. It does not have to be the same. Oh yeah, and I'm just typing I enter so that when I type I, the command enter curve pops up because it's kind of my, I use it a lot. I think that's why it shows up. And I just have to press enter. So let's make another one. This one, let's make it so that it kind of goes inwards, so like that. That's just two of the same curve. A bit of diversity, so like that. So that's our second curve. And we can actually draw another one. So let's say, and because at how everything is arranged, I'm just going to draw one here and then rotate it around the circle. So our second curve, I mean, sorry, our third curve can look something like that. And then what I'm going to do is center mark this, that. So now I have these two centers. Oops, this one didn't work. Center mark. We have two centers. We can rotate one of the curves. Rotate 3D. So your rotational axis should be this center to the other center. And then if we click on one of the point, so let's say this one here, this essentially rotates along your circular axis. So like that. And now we have two cross sections and three railings. Then we can use the network surface command. And you can see how much freedom it has essentially. And you also have all of these control points that are free to kind of move around, and you can change the orientation of your shape. That'd be too much. So like, for example, actually let's record history. I'm wondering how this will turn out. Network surface. But first we got to get the shape first, right? So it asks us to select all the curves in your network, which is your three railings, that one, three railings, and your two cross sections. So now everything's selected, press enter. Okay. And you can see how we created this complex kind of like a sculpture shape, just simply from your two cross sections and railings. And also, since we had record history, I'm pretty sure we can just, so we have one curve here, right? That was originally here. I'm pretty sure we can move the control points. So move this one here. So now I'm stretching the shape out, and you can see how the shape, your 3D shape is adjusting with it. So this is just a really good demonstration. So now you can see that. Oops. So the curve kind of looks like that, inward, outward. So kind of like a mountain shape. You can actually adjust it. So let's say we want to put this curve inwards by a lot, like that. And then you can see how every slight modification of your curve changes the outcome of your 3D shape. Yeah, and record history is something that's really good for demonstrations because you actually get to see how the end result turns out. So that's network surface. And we also learned last time. So before I move on to anything else, does anyone have any questions? All right. So actually, this is kind of fun. The record history. So we do have another curve. So there's this one like here. I think. Usually it's like a little more darkened. So it's like here. Okay. This one here. And we can also modify this. And the reason this is kind of this part is extruding outward is because first of all, your shape has to make a full revolution around the circle. And because this one in here is, oh, I lost the curve. I think it's here. Oh, right there. Okay. So we have this curve here and another one somewhere like here. The computer is essentially rotating both of these curves with regard to your circular axis. And this is why your shape might look kind of weird, but everything actually matches up in the center at this line right here. How do I draw that? Yeah. At this line right here. everything kind of matches up because the two curves that you drawn, they merge together to create this 3D shape. And the network surface has a lot more uses than just creating random shape. It actually is one of the most useful commands. If you're making, for example, well, not necessarily like, what can I, so in real life, you have like geometrical products and then you have organic products. So example of geometrical would be like the tissue box. So it's essentially just, oh, it's blurred. Oh, okay. Essentially just like a cube that's kind of flattened. But then you also have, for example, I don't have any example right now, but you have these, oh yeah, like a razor blade, like is it called a razor blade? Like what you use to shave. I think everyone probably has that at home. That would be an example of kind of like a organic product. Then you would actually be able to control. So what I'm saying is when you want to make organic products, you can use network surface to first develop the outlines, and then the computer is going to generate the 3D shape for you based on how your curve is created. So yeah, so that's network surface. It's a very powerful command. And I think we have something planned. And also, even though we've been kind of like moving on to the advanced parts, we also have some pretty useful, pretty cool commands. And I spelled clothes wrong. We have some pretty useful commands that are not hard. They're just really, really good and convenient for in future modeling. And you can also search these up. Some of these I didn't even know. Like for example, like a funny story. When I first started the club, right? And I had a circle. Oops. Oh yeah, stop record history. Oh yeah, this is really cool. So story after. So you can actually move the cross section as well. So right now these are lined up. So they're centers. The two, remember we had two uniform circles kind of from here. So we originated from a shape like this. So two circles. Now we actually can move since I've recorded the history, which means the computer is going to redo the command every time I make some modification. I can actually move this here like that. You can see how this shape changed based on it. And actually, this is not very exact because you can see our railing curves. They don't actually move with the cross section, but it's really cool to see how it works. And I was saying, like, for example, the command center mark, I didn't know until like, I don't know, short time. So before you can actually just draw lines. So for example, like this, draw a polyline, draw another one, make sure these are perpendicular to each other, and this will be your center. But after I learned there's a convenient way that you can do it, which is just called center mark. So we're gonna look into some of that today. Oops. Here we go. And the first one, we're gonna actually close curve review on it. Yeah, so we did a review on network surface. And now we're gonna do a, well, this is just a really short command. It's when you're making big projects, oftentimes you don't really close, you sometimes mess up closing your curve. But as long as you have O snap on, it's really, really hard to miss any openings. But in case you do, and you're making a house, I remember I was making kind of this, I wonder, still have the picture. Capture. I think it's close. Yeah, when I was making this, I think I'm sharing my whole screen. You guys can probably see. So when I was making this model, there were actually some really, really complicated shapes inside. This was kind of like I mean, like a gallery that people could walk around and has that nice kind of semicircular shape. And some of the curves here in the floor, they were not close because I hadn't aligned the correct lines was the x-axis. That's why everything was a bit off. Like somewhere here, maybe they could be not close. And that means you just have a, let's say we have intercurve, and I'm in the wrong place. Okay, let's say we have an intercurve. And so yeah, something like that. And just when you're about to close it off, you kind of end it like here. That so that when you want to make a planar surface from it, Let's lift this up a bit so we can clearly see. So planar surface, enter. There were actually, was there self-intersect? Oh, it's right here. They're self-intersecting. Make a less complicated shape. It's like that. And then we kind of just intentionally not close this. And this happens sometimes where you can't use the command planar surface because it must be closed. There's actually this command called close curve, which is very convenient. And if planar surface doesn't work on a certain curve, there's two reasons. One, as explained here, is not closed. And the other one is it's not planar, which means you might have had planar mode off so that the curve turned into 3D. And in that case, there isn't any kind of make surface planar command that you can just simply use, but there are other ways, which we're gonna explain later. So you can type, for this one, you can type close curve. Oops. Close curve, enter. And essentially what it does is, since we had these openings, it grabs this edge and the other edge and just draws a straight line as such and connects the curve. This is only used when you're not sure where the opening is. So now we can, we're able to use the command planar surface and create kind of like this, kind of looks like a whale. Look at, create this surface here. So that was closer, the close curve, sorry. Very simple command. And now we're gonna move on to dupe edge, which is actually very, very useful. Okay, here. You can see that I have some really simple templates and this house over here. Now we're gonna learn dupe edge. Dupe edge, basically it's literally what it does what it sounds like. It duplicates, dupe stands for duplicate the edge. And usually this is useful for non-line curves. Wait, yeah, just curves. So it could be like a circle, could be like a intercurve. They're not really used often on lines because you have this command called polyline. And let's say we have this now like a cube, small cube here. Basically what intercurve does, and we can compare the two here. If we, sorry, not intercurve, dupe edge. Dupe edge, we can select the edge to duplicate, which is this. If we select this circle here and press enter, it's a very simple command because it literally just gets a copy of the line, and you can paste it or move it around. Now, a circle might not be that hard because you also have this circular command that you can get the center of the circle, or actually you can use, so click on this little blue triangle here, and the computer gives you so many more ways to make a circle. Now we can, let's say we use diameter. So everyone should know what a diameter is, right? It basically is you have your center to your outer edge, and then that's the radius, and one outer edge to another, it's the diameter. So we can go to, let's say, and it doesn't have to be exact. So like here, as long as it's perpendicular, like that. So now we've essentially used the command dupe edge, but using the circular command. Now you might ask, like, why would we use dupe edge if we can just use, lines? So if we want this edge, we can just use the line, draw a line, and copy it away. Well, there is a something that we can't really replicate. So for example, this here, just make a copy of it over here. If we want to somehow extract this, so this is kind of like a tunnel. So you have one opening and you go in, like you see in an aquarium. So usually you have your stair, or actually your walkway here, and then you have, this would be glass, and then you have your sea animals float around. But what if you want to, and notice how this is not a perfect circle. It's kind of like a, well, I forgot how I created it, but you actually cannot, if you try to trace it, right? Let's say this is our building, and there's been a new kind of building plan, and we want to connect this tunnel to, let's say, the main building. And the main building is kind of somewhere, right? Oh, the main building shape is not decided because it has to perfectly match this, right? Just move this away. This would be a really interesting demonstration. Here, okay. Let's say this is our aquarium. And this is it's opening that way. So this is opening here. And we're trying to connect this to your main building without, obviously the water leaking, right? So this would be kind of like a tunnel. Now we can use dupe edge. So we extracted these two curves. And you can see how easy it is to simply just click on the edge and press enter. And it gives you an exact replica of your curve. So like that. And then we can, so now that we have this curve, we can design our, let's say, main building, right? And I think the floor should be flat. Like that. And then we can go actually a little more creative. So let's say, actually, let's assume that the main building is a cube. I lied. Let's say this is our main building. And we have a kind of like a gap here. And we want to make a solid walkway that gets smaller and smaller. So let's say we do this. Like a really small. So let's say that's our opening from the main building. And I'm not in planner mode. Oops. Actually, a good way to do this is to just draw it on here and move it all the way over onto your building. Like that. Actually rotate this 9 degrees. Here. And now this is kind of like a line. Just adjust this a bit. So we have this, oops, this here, curve point. That. So yeah, a little smaller. Like that. And now we can actually, let's say we trim the building so we can select the thing that we just made. And there's just a really like fun project off the back of my head. So you can trim that. So now you see how the surface has been trimmed. There's an opening. And now you can actually, using network surf, which we just learned. So you have your two cross sections here. So this one and this one. And if we want to make kind of like a tunnel that is changing in size, so it gets bigger here and smaller here. You can go to front view. I think it's front view. No, right view. Where is this? So like that. Okay, so it's here. So I say we just select these like that. And the reason I'm doing this is that it's kind of that's out of the way of my project. Oh, perfect, it's here. Okay, so we can actually go to 4-window mode. This is where it comes in really clutch. You can actually, I think I demonstrated this before. So let's say our point, obviously our tunnels, since it has to be closed, starts at some certain point. Zoom in a bit. So it's the F to zoom in selection. It has to start somewhere on the tunnel. So we can click this point to set our initial point. And then our next step, we can actually, so I'm moving my cursor to the front view here. And then we can actually make interesting shapes. Actually, I want to make this kind of downward slope. It's like that. And when you're clicking it back on the second cross section, just for accuracy purposes, you can actually go on here, click enter. So that's one cross section. And then you can make another one. I think for network surface, you need 3. Or at least 3 would be kind of very exact. So here, so here, and back into here. So that's 2 curves. Let's actually try, or let's not. And then we can just make a very random one, so like here, like that. This is just for the outlines, and it makes the computer it makes how actually does it? Yeah. So the more curves you have, obviously, the more your shape end result is going to be what you want. And now that we have 3 curves, you can make more curves if you like. So maybe you want an extrusion, which is like a kind of like a big bump, maybe in the area of here. Then either you can make a curve, so you can make one curve and change the control points. So let's go back to perspective. Now that we have our 3 curves, let's actually make another one. Yeah. So go back to 4 windows. Intercurve. This, because this part is kind of empty, the other half. Go here. Make this opposite, that, and then click it back onto your shape. Here. Yeah, and these lines are not planned. They're just going how I feel like them to. And we can always adjust your control points. So now that we have your 2 cross sections, right? And these kind of strings, kind of, yeah, like flying strings, but they're actually railings. So you can type network surface, select all your curves, which is this curve, that curve. Actually, let's join these 2. This one and this one. Oops. That one here. These might be a little bit hard to click, so it helps to zoom in. Maybe they're not duplicate. Okay, duplicate edge. So I only duplicated the 1/2. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So now join, and now we can use network surface. All the curves in network. So there's this one curve, that one here. I'll ignore this one. Network surface. Here. So essentially selecting everything that we've made. Oh yeah, and I don't think this is a little weird. This curve. So I think there might be some problem with this. That's why it's kind of separating in half. So let's assume that. Oh yeah, maybe it's too complicated. I don't know how it works. Oh yeah, it works now. Oh, weird. These select everything. Curve, click, and just accept everything. And now you can see how essentially we've made like a tunnel wave from your aquarium. Let's make this like blue just for clarity. So we can, oh yeah, we're gonna talk about layers off after this. So let's say that's our aquarium, that's our main building, which should be, let's make it, we can make it black. And this, it's actually, this could be, if we look at the, we can change our views. So, and you have render, which is putting things on a kind of a realistic lighting. And you can also apply materials, which we might get to today. And then you have ghosted. So ghosted is very interesting because it's a half transparent or translucent, and allows you to kind of see what's going on in your project, which is really cool if you're making buildings and you want to see how everything inside interacts, while also keeping an eye on the main building, which is what we have right here. Okay, so that's how you make a well, I would call this like an extension based on your original project, right? Because if you think about it, we've had this shape given to us before, and now everything that is here, so this one, including this shape, if I can select it, let's go back to shade, yeah. The shape and your kind of what I call main building, these are what we made from that. And also you can see how dupe edge is very important because it allows these to match perfectly, because you don't want any water leak, right? Since this is an aquarium. And also, so record history is very cool as well, because if you record history, type in network surface, select all of the stuff that we made, curve, 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 enter. And it also allows us to adjust based on how your curve is acting. So in this case, I think this one is a little too thin. See, oh yeah, it's too thin, okay. But this is fine because we can actually change the control curves. For example, we move this outward. What's this the other way? Oh yeah, here. So we can move this the other way. If there are more curves, what's the other one? This one here in the bottom. Grab this curve here, and then kind of just move it, move one of the control points, one or two of the control points, like that. so that it gives it more room or gives more space for people to walk through. And you have this is still a little too thin. Like here. And then you have this point here, which is pretty important. So like that. Yeah, so this is what record history is for. Basically modifying, it's a very convenient way to modify your final product. And yeah, so now you get something like that, actually. Just to make it more perfect. Like that should be good. That's like kind of like a tunnel way that you can walk through. I don't know the scale of it or how it's going to be implemented, but that is something cool that we could create from everything that we've learned. Okay, so I covered a lot here, and it was mainly just for kind of entertainment because we're using Dupe Edge. We're not using Make 2D. Yeah, we were using Network Surface. And yeah, so just these two commands can create a lot of complicated shapes, and it really helps you to expand on your imagination because Network Surface is a very powerful command. So now we're gonna move on to the next one. All right, what time is it? Oh, I don't think we're gonna get to rendering, but it's fine. But before that, let's talk about layering and how that's useful in Rhino. Essentially, if you've used like Photoshop, I think some people use Photoshop. David, have you used Photoshop? Oh, David, you good?
Uh-huh.
Have you used Photoshop? It was an interaction question.
I don't. I actually don't.
Well, you do have a, well, so essentially what layer is, I was hoping you said yes, but it's okay. Layer is like,
I use Pixar, but I don't use
yeah,
Photoshop.
because everything image, and when you're in, what I think everyone knows what Photoshop is, basically just like P tool. So you have your different layers that are overlapping on each other. So if you have one, I don't know, one piece of paper and two pieces of paper, you can put them on different layers so that they are you can see one but not the other. So that's actually not how layers work in Rhino. I don't know why I was explaining that because layers in Rhino, they assign each layer a different color. So let's actually open the brand new document because this is pretty important. There should be when you're modeling, you should have a good habit of layering, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But just as we wait this to load, okay, so this is a brand new file. And we're just going to use cubes for the sake of clarity. One cube. I'll make sure it's in shaded. One cube, two cube. Yeah, and I hope that everyone is kind of trying stuff out. It doesn't have to be exactly what I'm doing, but just playing around with everything we've learned. Yeah, like that. Cubes. Therefore, we have 4 cubes. And right now, if I stretch this part out, where it says help, basically you see this pizza shape here. You actually have these layers, and right now it only has one because that's the default layer. Actually, it shouldn't have one, but it's fine. Yeah, so you can have, so by clicking new layer, you add more layers, and you can change the colors. So let's say we want red, yellow, blue, just the 3 primary colors. Blue and yellow. Where's yellow? So we have red. Okay, yellow is too bright. Let's try like pink. Actually, pink doesn't stand out. I'm bad at colors. Like green. Yeah, green's fine. The dark green. Okay, if I don't want to hurt your eyes. So not the 3 primary colors, but red, blue, and green. And so now we're gonna, let's say we can apply the colors, right? Which thereby by changing the layer. So we can select this box here, and all we have to do for changing layer is say this is your layer number 1, which is red. So after selecting your box, right click the layer here, and give you all of these. And we're gonna go over some of this after. So you would go to change object layer and click. And now you can see that your box has turned red, which means that it's on layer 01. We can do the same. So select, right click, change object layer. And the same here. There. So now we have red, blue, and green. And also the default layer, which is in black. And also when you have black, it's actually not fully black. And if you, just for like the sake of having cool colors, if you want your shape to be black, you set it to a very dark gray. So not completely black, like a dark gray. So now you can see that this has turned black. And so now we have these colors. They look very cool, but what are they used for? One thing is colors. First of all, colors are very easy to distinguish. And this means that when you have a red and a blue, right, you're not going to mix things up. And if you want to make two individual projects, so let's say, I don't know, I want to make a house, a red house, and a blue car. So let's assume that's mine. Oh yeah, and right now you see this check mark here. This means that I'm currently working in the default layer, which is dark, black or dark gray. And everything I make, let's say I draw a line. Draw a line. Turn on my fans. Right, okay. Sorry, so there we go. When I draw a line, that is actually black because my check is in the default layer. But if I double click, actually just single click, just click it once, click the red layer once. Now when I make a line, you can see how the line is green. And everything that I make will be in green. So let's say I make another cube. Instead of making it in the default layer and changing it, I can actually just simply make it in the red layer. Yeah, and this is how layers work. But first step, let's say we want to make a red house. That's my house. Here we go. Shoot. This is how I make houses. Oh God, okay. House like that. Right view. That's our house. There we go. We can extrude this. So just a very simple like kindergarten drawing, right? So we have our just cap this. That's our house. And it's like a blue car. Say that's our car here. They're very easy to distinguish, as you can see. So that's the first advantage of working in layers. You're not going to mix stuff up. Another is when you're making a complicated project. So for example, this, actually, let me open my seeing file. Oh, there's seeing line. This is pretty perfect. Yeah, so easy to distinguish. And also when you're working in different, so before we talked about rendering, which it essentially is, but you have your render mode here, right? And this gives you light and it gives you shadow, allows you to see more things realistically. And it also allows you to apply materials. So if you want, so this right now is kind of like a foam or like a paper cube because it's completely white. You can actually apply the metal texture on it so that it turns, well, metallic and reflects. When you have a more complicated project like which one? Like this one we have here. So this is something that I've made. And okay, this is not good layering, but let me find the one. So I was rendering. Yeah, so you can see here. This is kind of like a scene that I've made. And you can notice how immediately things are different colors, right? So for example, you have these leaf shapes that are black, and you also have your base, which is red or pinkish. And this is mainly used for if we look at a render here. So for example, this one, you can actually see how the leaf shapes they're like blurry glass, whereas your outlines, these are kind of like a white plastic kind of texture. And working in different layers helps you to find your elements more easily when you're rendering, because you can just simply click and everything of that layer will be directed to a certain material, which we're going to talk about when we're rendering. So yeah, so that's working in layers and just some micro details. Oops. The micro details here, too many files. Let's go back to shade mode. And let's get our houses things back. Okay. Actually, keep that. So you still have these. And another convenient feature about layers is that you can lock them. And actually the only reason that it's kind of like when you make a completed work, you can lock it and work on other stuff in the meantime. But one thing that I found really useful is it's for planes and not like the flying plane, but like your surface planes. So in this case, like the grid that you have here, if we make one ourselves, right? In case that this gets too small. So let's say, oh, not red. Okay, let's make it in black. So like that. We type planar surface. We can actually, okay, so let's put this to a different layer. That is, I don't know, like gray, that. And then change object layer, right? That's changing your surface plane into the kind of the white grayish layer. And now you can see that there's a light bulb and a lock, which says unlocked. And basically, if you lock it, you're not able to select it anymore. And this essentially became our working plane, which we can create stuff on, and we don't have to worry about it being selected and moving around because it's essentially locked. Oh, the line is not locked, but the surface is essentially locked into place. And this is useful when you, like, say, for example, you have a small project. Let's say you have a small circle here. Let's unlock the layer. If you want to select multiple circles, we have two circles like that, like a snowman, like upside down snowman. You have these two circles. And if you want to select both of them, you drag and make a window, right? So like that. But when your base plane is not locked, you actually move the base plane around. So like that, see how the base plane is moving around? When in reality, what I want to do is actually make this plane and select the circle. There are two ways to do it. You can hold Alt and drag a window, so like that, so that the base plane doesn't move anymore. So Alt on your keyboard. I'm not sure about Mac. I'll check it out later. But for PC, it's Alt and you drag. Now you get this cool, nice window here, or you can lock your surface like that, and you don't have to press Alt and just simply drag because your base plane is now unselectable. So that is another feature about layers. Okay, and I'm just kind of going through how to how everything in layers work. And the one last thing is you can hide layers. Just clicking this light bulb here, so off. Yeah, so that's essentially it. It's useful when you have like when you're making a room render, you have created like a room here, and then you're making all the stuff inside, like lights, tables, chairs. Well, most importantly, lights. And if you want to work on the room like itself, you can actually turn off the door layer, which makes the door disappear, but not actually delete it, so that you can move in and do all of the details on this stuff. Like that's like the only useful thing I can think of. So yeah, so there's something to keep in mind. Make sure you're working in different layers, and whenever you start making a new object, right? Unless it is like something like the aquarium that I've created. Okay, so for example, when I was making this, I was keeping track of my different pieces, and I can actually, so you can see that this is blue, and then you have the thing that we created. This could be in the red layer, right? Like that, it's blue red, and our main building can just stay in gray. So yeah, so that's different layers to think about because it makes your model really convenient. Once you get into rendering, you can just go like, boom, I want all the blue layers to be metal and all the red layers to be plastic. And it's really simple and convenient. Yeah, so that's layers. And I'm just realizing that we should take a 10-minute break. So I'll put on a timer and I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, so let's get back from our break. So we have like around 20 minutes. And just something to hold up here. Okay. So I was gonna say like the recording for last time is right here. If you didn't get it in your emails, actually, yeah, I sent it. I think I sent out an email. So if you didn't get the recording, it's here, or you can just it's on my YouTube channel. So every like 1 or 2 days after I post it, and you should be able to see very easily because it should be on the front page. And now let's move on to so we finished talking about layers. And now we can start doing these. Okay. So we talked about dupe edge and we made the query. Now we can talk about this cool command called make 2D. And we can demonstrate this using a well, we can start with a simple shape. So like make 2D, essentially you have, let's say we have a cube here. When you type make 2D, a window pops. Oh, actually you select your object to draw. Interesting, it says draw. So enter. And you have all of these. So you have perspective, other stuff. You have your, actually don't worry about this for now. So just click OK. And then you can see that over here, right? You kind of had, so essentially we were viewing it like that and then it made our viewport. Why am I signed off? Interesting. Oh, no, wrong tab. Okay, sign in. Oh, this is really interesting. I'm like signed off, but I'm still in the meeting. Recording not. Right. Now,
对，
personal data at risk. Not good. The stop is still recording. Oh no. I think what happened was recording. Oh, it's still recording. Thank you. Okay.
That's still recording.
So that was very scary. Okay. And the make 2D. So we use the cube. So let's say make 2D. And we go to we can go to third angle projection and you can see that it's very straightforward. Once you click OK, it should give you a lot of boxes. Yeah, see how it's generating these boxes? And these might seem like random boxes, it's still generating. Okay. Okay. So you have but once we move on to more complicated objects, so make 2D like that, and we go to third angle projection, this basically just gives you your top, your sides view in lines, essentially. So we have this shape here, which is the tunnel that we had. And it gives you these kind of circular shapes and a top view, so like that. This might not seem clear enough either, but once we move on to something like this, we can make 2D. Actually, I think I already did it in here, there. So this is the same file, but it's just in a different color. And you can see how using the make 2D command, I was able to generate these not this one, delete. I was able to generate these really cool kind of side view. This is kind of like a blueprint of what you're making. So that will be the top view. You can see how there's like a pill like that, another one, and then you have this connecting. Yeah, so it kind of looks like that. So that's just what make 2D is for. It's mainly used for architecture when you're making buildings. And you want to kind of see what each plane is like. Yeah, so that's make 2D. It's a very fun command. But now we're going to talk about offset curve, which is actually really important for modeling. Not much as like modeling important, but kind of rendering important. And then we're gonna, so they're kind of dual commands. There's the offset curve and there's the offset surface, which we're both gonna talk about. So for offset curve, when we execute the command, oh, it's not called offset curve, it's called offset. But anyways, so it's called offset. Let me just make that clearer. Which layer do I have locked? Interesting. Doesn't matter. So just offset. Offset. Enter. So select your curves to offset. And let's say we use the circle we have here. And notice how immediately after selecting it, let's move this out of the way. So after selecting it, you get this toolbar here, which says distance, which right now is 1. If we increase this to, let's say 50, then you can see actually 50 is not very good. Let's try like, uh, yeah, let's try 10. 10. So you can see how we have our original curve, which is your this which is the one that's actually highlighted. Yeah, so your yellow curve is your original curve, and after using offset command, your original curve essentially gets larger or gets smaller. So if we do the command twice, one for the larger one and one for the smaller one, we essentially have 3 eccentric circles, meaning that they would have the same center. So we use center mark. All of these 3 circles would have the same center. And if we look at something like a semicircle, let's explode this. Get rid of the segment here. Explode. This. So we have these 2 semicircles. And if we want to offset, we can make a larger one. So like that. For example, so like that. Versus if we just copy and paste, right? Like that. You can see there's a very clear difference. Oops. So move this little to the right. So you can notice how for this one, oops, where's that? Oh. Delete this. So for this curve here, for these 2 curves, that every point at every given point, the distance between them are the same. Whereas if you look at this, you have varying distances, which could be something that you want. But this is the difference between offset serve and your, oh, for this one, I kind of just copy and pasted it. So we have original curve. So Control C, Control V, and then move this upwards. So there are 2 ways that you can make varying patterns depending on how you like it. But so that's offset curve or offset in general. But moving on to offset surface, this is where this is the command that uses a lot in rendering. So for example, you can type offset surface, select your surfaces or poly surface to offset. So we can select, so we have a very little house here. You can select your rectangle and you can see all these arrows going outwards and your distance is still 1. So let's make it 10. Actually, let's make it 5 like that. And you have these arrows kind of extruding outwards they're perpendicular to each of your surface. So this one is straight up and you have these straight left and right and straight down. When you click on it, you actually invert everything. It might be a little unclear. So you also have these arrows at the edges. And what they do once I execute the command. So like if actually inward is better. So you can see how, oh, that's too much. Sensor, like 2, 1.5. Can extrude that inwards. And this basically gives your surface thickness, which we will talk about. So let's group, let me join these as well and use offset serve. So should corners that actually so that we can see a clear demonstration. So you have, before using offset surface, you actually have one paper that is essentially kind of it doesn't have thickness because when you render it, you can see how it's just like a piece of paper. But once you've used the command offset surface, I'm gonna do it in render mode. So let's say we have this surface. Actually, let's have all of these and your extrusion as well. So offset surface. You can see all of these. This one pointing up. You can see that immediately you notice the difference that they have thickness now, which is something that you want in your modeling. So yeah, so that is offset surface and only uses when you're done with your project, which means that you're kind of finished with modeling. So in this case, I have my house, the outline of my house done. Now I can start adding thickness to prepare myself for rendering. Okay, because without offsetting your surfaces, everything that you make would seem very fragile and empty, which is something that you don't want when you're making realistic modelings. So yeah, so that I think that is the last command in this section. So I want to talk about one last thing before we kind of prepare for the lecture. the
Hello，
upcoming
林
lecture.
贤好。
Oh, hello. Hi. So okay, so the one last thing is what's called paneling tools in 3D, which I think I have a dome file somewhere. Should be fine. Dome. Seating. Oh, should be in club. And we're not going to get through all of this, so we'll leave some for next week. Okay, this should be opening in a second. Okay, so this is something that so last time we were working on paneling tools, which basically only in 2D. And this is just kind of like drawing patterns onto your page. So for instance, we have, just as a general review. Actually, I think we're not going to do 3D today. We're just going to do a general review on 2D. And in the meantime, you can go get paneling tools. Sorry, I didn't realize. Oh, it's okay. So you have your paneling tool. So let's say we have a plane or a rectangular plane, right? You just have to create a paneling grid. So for example, surface. Yeah, so go to create paneling grid and surface domain number. And once we have I'm using a rectangular shape here, but you can select the surface, enter, and it gives you these dots, which are essentially your grids. So once we accept the command, you can make your own shapes. So for example, last time I think I used like a triangle. Now we have this shape, an upside down W, I don't know. We can go to paneling tools again, go to paneling from grid. And we can go to panel custom 2D, like that. And you can select your grid first, select that grid, enter. So you select your base surface, which is this one here. So it's gonna blink. And then now you can select your custom curves. That, enter. And it's gonna give you this preview and you can press enter again. And now you have that. This shape, that is kind of repeating in each and every one of your grid and they're grouped together. So paneling tools in 2D are essentially just generating repeating patterns on a certain 2D object, which is pretty interesting. And as I was talking about before, you can actually make some really cool stuff. So last time I was mentioning a diamond. So like that. And now let's say we make a center mark. Oh, are people joining in? Okay. So just one last thing. So like diamond, I guess you can that was you can loft these two. So loft the curve, the circle that you have here and the point here. And you can notice how it makes like a triangle bottom. And lastly, you can cap this. And you can also make a paneling grid. So create paneling grid, domain number. So by adjusting the grid, I think that's a little too much. So like 5, 6, 5, no. 5 by 3 should be fine. By 2. So you get this grid. And now essentially what we can do is get a triangle, like an equilateral triangle, or just any triangle actually. You can panel from your grid. So panel custom 2D, select your paneling grid, this one and this one. enter custom curves and points, this one. So after checking the preview, press enter again. And when you delete these, oh, oops. So I need to adjust the surface domain number a bit. So for example, I still have these two surfaces. Okay, so let's say it is like 1 by 5. No, like 2 by 3. Let's try this out. This should be able to work. Actually, no, paneling tools. Again, so the U axis needs to be a little more dense. So you can create another paneling grid. Get so now that's 3 by, you can do like 5 by 2. Enter. Okay, or maybe I'll just leave this. Paneling tools, paneling grid. Oh, you don't have to attend the lecture. It's wait. I think Harry, were you in here? If you don't have to attend it, if you could, that would be really cool. So paneling tools. Okay, so I think we're gonna maybe talk about paneling tools next time. And next time we're gonna move into the 3D as well. So for Diamond, basically what I was going for is, I think I had a demo here, but opening a file might take too long. So essentially you just have these rectangles that you can afterwards make into surfaces. And then after you've connected the surfaces, you can actually render them with kind of like a glass texture so that they end up being reflective. And you have, instead of a round circle, you have edges looping out. So then it would make a really cool diamond if you render it. I'll try to make it next time. So yeah, so I think that is it for our class today. And as I mentioned before, we have, no, not this one. Yeah, we have our lecture afterwards. So if you're free, you're welcome to stay and listen to these senior students talk about their experience with art. So yeah, but I think that's it for our meeting today. And I'll see everyone next week. I'll post a recording and the file should be in your email. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming and you're welcome to stay for the meeting. Right. Thank you. And in the meantime, if you want to listen to the meeting, you can just stay in here. And it will start at 7, so in 13 minutes. Okay. And David, do you have some time to stay?
Let me check.
Okay. I'm gonna try to make my computer more organized. Oh yeah, I'll stop the recording.